Antonio Brown went right down the drain, is what he did.
Yeah, and that's what makes Tomlin a Hall of Fame coach, and the same thing with Belichick, because, I mean, Antonio Brown's sexual assault scandal was leaked while he was with New England for that 1 week, so that kind of got to him.
All right. We want to welcome our next guest is former Detroit Pistons coach Ray Scott. And Ray, thanks for being on the Sports Exchange.
And apologies for being late. I am so sorry.
That's okay. No problem. We'll make the most of the time that we have. We got about 10, 12 minutes, so we'll just basically on this show, Ray, introduce you to the rest and look forward to having you as our NBA analyst. Okay, Ray? All right?
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Well, anyways, if anybody knows about Ray Scott, it's probably this Scott Morganroth. Okay, and Ray Scott is a very close friend of my colleague George Eichhorn. And just to let people know about Ray Scott, the former Pistons head coach, he was inducted into the Michigan Sports Hall of Fame in 2008. He was honored with the Detroit Pistons as the 30 all-time Pistons greatest players during the 50th anniversary. And in 1974, he was the coach of the year for the Pistons, compiling a 52-30 record and a 7-game series with the Chicago Bulls that only you and I, Ray, and a lot of Detroiters realize that the Pistons gave the Bulls everything they had, and there were a lot of good players. So why don't you go ahead and reflect on that, and when we bring on the program, we'll go ahead and talk about some of the other things. How does that sound, Ray?
Well, that's fine, Scott. Thank you for that introduction.
You're welcome.
I'm not being a household name, but actually being with a franchise like the Detroit Pistons that went on to become the Bad Boys in the late 80s. A lot of people think that Scott, that time is actually the beginning of the Pistons, because that was the hullabaloo that was caused by Isaiah Thomas and Kelly Tripucka coming to the Pistons in the draft and really beginning to make a indentation in Detroit for basketball. Basketball was not or is not even to this day the prominent sport in Detroit.
Right.
The Detroit Lions are number one, as you know, and then I would say the Tigers, and then I would say the Red Wings, and the Pistons were fourth in that line of teams in the area. But we like to believe that in the 60s and 70s, because we had good players, we had DeBusschere, Dave Bing, we had great players. Then we went into the Bob Lanier era with Dave Bing when I coached. We had great players, but we didn't have the prominence. But that prominence took place pridefully for all of us with the Detroit Pistons led by Isaiah Thomas. So that was the greatest part of the Pistons. But I like to think that we caused a mild uproar in 1973 and 74 against those dreaded Chicago Bulls, a team that I was trying to make in intensity and defensive ability. I was trying to meld our team like that, to be that type of scrappy, gutty Midwest team like the Chicago Bulls with Van Leer and Sloan and Walker and Butterbean and Clifford Ray and Boerwinkle. They were a good team, and they also had a very good bench with Bobby Weiss and Howard Porter and Rick Edelman. So it was a series that we certainly were not favored over them, but we felt like we could compete with them, and then we felt as the season ended that we could beat them, that we really could beat them and get to the Milwaukee Bucks, who were the team of the Midwest at that time, with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar being a very dominant center, and us having Lanier. We thought we had a good matchup for that team. So that made a lot of interest in Detroit, and it was the first time that they ever had, multiple sellouts, lines around the corner of people to attend the games. We had a great deal of press attention with that team at that time, and it was all so special. And it was just a period of just the Pistons being like Cool in the Gang. We were just a good, and you yourself, you as a young person became very interested in the team, and the aforementioned George Eichhorn came to work for the franchise at the time as a young man. So it was a good time in Detroit for the Detroit Pistons in terms of making a mark in sports in the area. And I'm very, very proud to be part of that group. But as you know, that's also the time that the team was sold to Mr. Bill Davidson and his group,
right,
by Mr. Zalman. And I think Mr. Zalman said we have to sell while the iron is hot. And so allegedly he sold the team for $8.1 million to Mr. Davidson. And so that was going to shorten my career because I certainly had not done anything to impress Mr. Davidson, who was coming into the basketball world as a coach, with a coach, not as a
right,
coach, but with a coach, as an owner who had no relationship. And
right.
Generally coaches and owners have a relationship, and we had none. And so subsequently, after a season, I was let go the next season, and that I found it strange, but that's the way of the world.
Yeah, that was definitely another era back then when you were coaching at Cobo Arena. Many of the young generation don't realize that Cobo Arena was the venue that the Pistons played downtown. And another thing I should point out, since we had the Hall of Fame theme as well, is that you were also voted into the 2017 Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame. So since it's Baseball Hall of Fame week, I had to go out there and mention Michigan Sports Hall of Fame, 2017 Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame, and so forth. So hey, listen, you know what, Ray? Now I'll tell you, just to show you how much I know my basketball, if I recall correctly, Dick Motta was the coach of the Chicago Bulls, wasn't he?
That's right.
I'll be darn goodness.
Oh, yeah. Dick Motta was one of the first NBA coaches that also had an assistant coach. His assistant coach was Phil Johnson.
Right.
And Phil went on to become a coach of the year with the Kansas City Kings when he had the Tiny Archibald, Sam Lacey teams. But yeah, Dick Motta had a very, very, very good system. I loved his system and the way they shared the ball and the things that they did. But I also loved the way that they played defense, the pressure that they applied. He's one of those guys I think that is in the mold of Red Auerbach and coaches like that, because they come in with a firm philosophy and they fit the players into that basic philosophy and they make it work. So he's someone that I've admired from a distance for quite some time. But please don't tell him I said that.
Oh, I won't. That's okay. And now I know the Bulls had Jerry Sloan, who went on to be their coach and then had an incredible career with the Utah Jazz. So you talk about a defensive team. Jerry Sloan was as good as it ended up getting. And when he landed in Utah, I don't know if they have a statue outside of Utah, but they should. No, and I'll tell you, let's go back to that 1974 team. We have another 6 minutes, and we're going to call this your introductory show, and then we'll go into some other things at a later date. How's that sound, okay?
Oh, it's good.
So let's talk about that 1974 team. You already alluded to it with Dave Bing and Bob Lanier, two Hall of Famers. Bob Lanier drafted out of St. Bonaventure, and I believe Dave Bing came out of Syracuse. Is that right?
That's correct.
So that you talk about a great 1-2 punch back in the day. Those two guys were definitely it.
Well, we changed things when I took over, and I had looked at the team and I looked at the way that the NBA worked. When I became the coach of the Pistons, as you know, Scott, the Pistons were an outside in team with Dave Bing and Jimmy Walker, players like that, being the primary threat of the team. When I took over, I said, wait, I sat down with Dave Bing and I explained to Dave, I said, Dave, our league really works off of the post. That's where the success is. And I was talking specifically about Kareem or Nate Thurman or Walt Bellamy, Dave Cowens, Willis Reed. I said, I would like for our team to be focused on pivot play. And Dave, being the smart guy that he was, agreed with me and said, Ray, I will be whatever you want me to be. And I said, well, what I'd like for you to be is the quasi point guard, because I'd also like for you to be our scoring guard, but I don't have a player of your magnitude. So I would like for Chris Ford to be to handle the ball for us, and you be the shooting guard. And I'd like for, I had Curtis Rowe and Don Adams, and I wanted both of them to be very good defensively because they were not great offensive players. But with my mindset being on defense, I wanted them to be great, great defenders. And, of course, we had Bob in the middle, and Bob was the go-to guy that when the game was on the line, we needed the ball to put pressure on the other team. We wanted the ball in Bob Lanier's hands. And the team agreed with it. For the most part, they agreed with it. Of course, I had questions from guys that didn't understand the philosophy, and their questions were, why would you have this type of offense where we're going to Bob Lanier? The ball has to go into Lanier in the third quarter. And that's because they didn't understand that to put the pressure on a team in the NBA, you had to have a center that you could throw the ball into to get into your offense, as opposed to the point guard starting the offense. See, a lot of people don't realize that with Kareem and Lanier and Willis Reed, Wilt Chamberlain, they were great passers, and they accumulated a lot of assists because the offense centered around them in the post. And that I really, really believed in. So most of the players bought into it. But like anything else, they get distracted, and they want to make money, and they want to be paid, and you lose our way. We lost that philosophy, I think, in my fourth year coaching. The guys just did not believe in that implementation any longer.
Okay, Lewis has a quick question. We have another few minutes to go.
Hey, Ray, first of all, thanks for being on our show tonight.
Thank you, Lewis. And I'm sorry again for being late. Apologies.
That's okay.
And we're not going to mark you tardy. So,
no, you could have marked me asleep. I actually fell asleep. I just had a hospital procedure Tuesday, and I'm still getting over it. So
no problem.
We're glad you're doing well, and we're able to join us tonight. So,
thank you.
My question to you is, looking back at that 74 team, you guys, not like today where they tend to rotate players in and out, you had a pretty balanced roster, and I don't think anybody on that team played below 70 games. With that being said, being that you've continued to follow the sport as it's progressed and then, it's become more globalized and we're in the age of big money contracts, I want your take as somebody who played and coached basketball in an older era. What is your opinion on load management? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Do you think it's counterintuitive to a team moving forward?
Oh, I think it's terrible. I think it's one of the worst things that I've ever heard in professional sports. You sign a multi-million-dollar contract to play a sport and to attract fans to the stadiums. And if I'm a fan and I'll go to a stadium on a Monday, a Wednesday, or a Friday night, I expect to see the